Today, I'd like to talk about inner change and how, at its heart, it's about returning to self. This is something I've talked and written about before, but today I'd like to share a little more of my own journey. Welcome to the Henny Flynn podcast, the space for deepening self-awareness with profound self-compassion. I'm Henny. I write, coach, and speak about how exploring our inner world can transform how we experience our outer world, all founded on a bedrock of self-love. Settle in and listen and see where the episode takes you. So even just in recording that brief intro to this episode, I could feel my adrenaline and cortisol levels rising. It's always interesting, I think, to see how it feels for us to share things that are very personal, very private. But I also recognise that it can be immensely helpful to hear what someone else has done and how someone else has navigated a time of change. So I'd really like to explore some of that, to share some of that. And if that's useful for you, or if there is just one thought, one action, one feeling that connects with you as I talk with you today, that helps you navigate your own journey of change, then for me it feels worthwhile. And I would really love to hear your reflections on what resonates, whether that's something that resonates in a powerful, positive way, or it's something that resonates in a, oh gosh, I hear myself in that too. Or it resonates in a way that actually provokes a different kind of reaction, a sense of no, that this isn't how it's going to be for me. All of that is valid. All of that is worthy of attention. And, and if you'd like to share those thoughts with me privately, then you're so welcome to reach out to me by email. I'll always try and answer the messages that I receive. And if you'd like to share your thoughts, maybe in the Instagram, I'll post about this episode on there, or share your thoughts in some other way, then please do. What prompted this episode was that a friend, someone I would never expect to say something like this to me, said to me a few weeks ago, I can't really remember when, that she often cites me as someone who's effected truly deep and sustained change. And I noticed that when she said it, my knee-jerk response was to sort of push that away, in the way that we often do with something we see as a compliment. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, what we see as a compliment? And instead, I noticed and I listened and then I reflected afterwards, and I thought, well, actually, it's true. I have effected deep and sustained change in my life, which doesn't mean that more change awaits me, or that I'm not always undergoing change. I think all of us always are. And maybe part of that sort of sustaining change is actually the willingness to always be on the journey. But it's interesting because she was someone that I worked with during the time when I began to really step into this fuller version of myself. I mean, that's a loaded phrase as well, isn't it? Does that mean to say I wasn't a full version of myself? Of course I was before, but maybe this more kind of adult version of myself. And her comment reminded me of the importance of not losing sight of where we've been in order to maintain the trajectory we're creating for ourselves. And I think this is so important. And it's something that I often find to be a really useful part of the process, working with the people who come and do the deep change work with me, that it's so useful to have a time during that process where we reflect on how far they have traveled, because often we can't see it ourselves, and it's so useful to it's one of the reasons why it's so useful to have a guide working with us as we do this deep change work, because they can see things that often we can't see. And so I was so grateful to this friend for having reminded me of where I'd been and how far I'd come, and the fact that she had noticed. And I was really honoured and touched by that. So if you have been with me for a while, then you might have heard parts of my own journey. I've talked and written before about the things that prompted that beginning. Some of those things were grief, the loss of my mother, stress. I had a very busy job, health. I became extremely unwell. They all played their part. And I've shared some of the changes that I've put in place. The most notable of all of them, I believe, is changing my relationship with myself. And in many ways, that sounds like the easiest thing, because it's the one that doesn't demand denial. It doesn't demand effort. It doesn't demand special equipment like so many changes can. But it's also, of course, one of the hardest things. And really, it's the thing that begins with making a choice to choose that relationship with ourselves. And it's through that powerful, fundamental, transformational choice that I have changed my relationship with so many other aspects of my life. And in fact, I genuinely don't think there's anything in my life that is unchanged. So my relationship with my family, with my partner, my husband, my son, my friends, my colleagues, and the wider world around me is so different now from how it was. And I think it's different because I'm choosing to see the triggers or the things that activate me, which still arise, of course. They don't disappear. And I choose now to turn toward them rather than to be consumed by them. And I also choose to see the glimmers, these things that are the opposite of triggers, these things that fill us with joy, and love them for what they are, rather than pretend that is all there is to see. For me, one of my processes was learning how to take off the rose-tinted spectacles that I used to wear. It was definitely a self-preservation strategy. If you have rose-tinted spectacles on, everything looks pink-hued and brighter. And taking them off was really scary. But it meant I was able to see all the colours of the world that I inhabited in their vivid entirety, rather than trying to kind of mask things in some way. And my relationship with work, with money, often a highly complex area for so many of us. My relationship with God. If I was writing that word, I would write it with a small g, because a big G brings a tsunami of meaning that isn't necessarily what I mean here. So my relationship with God with a small g are all transformed. My relationship with food, which was always, or for many years, horribly contorted. And my relationship with that ubiquitous drug, alcohol, they're all utterly unrecognizable. And part of my change process was learning how to eat well. And also I no longer drink alcohol because I saw the complexity that it held for me. And I chose ease instead of that complexity. And by choosing ease, I decided that alcohol no longer had a place in my life. Now, this depth of change, this sustained depth of change, hasn't been easy. And this isn't a podcast episode to say, and I did this, and I did this, and here's the list of all the things, the linear list of all the things I did, because that would be impossible. And the choices that I made are mine. They relate to my childhood. They relate to my time at school. They relate to my early years of my career. They relate to my relationship with my friends, my partner, myself. And so therefore the steps that I have taken relate to me, just as the steps that those who work with me relate to them. And your steps, if we've not worked together, your steps relate to you. But what I do know is that this depth of change has not been easy. And my journals, which have accompanied me throughout that process, they are full of pain and grief and confusion. And they are also full of wisdom, knowledge, awareness, and love. And it often felt as though I was breaking through a carapace of my own making. And it's no wonder that people so often use the metaphor of the chrysalis and the butterfly when they speak of awakening. This idea of this messy, melted transformation that occurs within the chrysalis as the butterfly literally melts away and then becomes reformed as it emerges, and then it emerges from the chrysalis into something completely new. I've just realized I said the butterfly melts away. Clearly it wasn't the butterfly that melts, it's the caterpillar. Even more, it's so messy. And one of the things that I am so mindful of is that it has been so many things and different people who've helped me along the way. And it has taken time. And again, sort of one of the things that, sometimes talk about is the fact that there is no magic wand. Nobody can tell you which direction to take. Nobody can tell you which way of thinking, what thing that you could do, how to feel. Nobody can tell you what is only and uniquely yours to work out. And also, there is no quick fix here. It will take time. It always takes time. And that's part of its incredible beauty, is trusting that once you start on the journey, that you will find your way. Now, of course, my work is all centered on supporting others with their own journey. I think it's, as one wonderful lady once said to me, oh my goodness, you're such a, what's the word? Oh gosh, a cliche. Because, it's not that uncommon for someone who has gone through something which is so transformative to then find themselves inexorably being drawn to supporting others with their own process of change. Or with their own experience of whatever it is that we've experienced. Pilates teachers for whom Pilates was the thing that solved chronic back conditions. Yoga teachers who found yoga was the thing that helped them navigate grief. Whatever it might be. But so often we find that people who work in some kind of therapeutic way have experience something very deeply themselves, and that's what drives and motivates them to want to support others. And I'm no different. And and I see that there is something deeply, powerfully key to that process of supporting others. And I believe that change goes beyond resolutions and goals. And it even goes beyond intentions, though I do believe intentions and affirmations are very important components of change. And the key, what I see right now, I might change this on another day, but for me right now, the key to this process of inner change sits within our beliefs and our willingness. So in motivational theory, it's seen that we need both willpower and way power to make things happen. So willpower, we're all familiar with. It's the commitment and the self-assurance that will make it through. We'll make it, whatever it is, we'll make it happen. Way power is subtler. And it's the belief that we will find the way. Even if we can't see all the steps right now, we're clear about the outcome we seek, and we're clear within ourselves that the hows will emerge along the way. I think there's some value in this, and that as a first step toward change, there's something even simpler we need to ask ourselves. And in fact, it's two questions. So when I'm first working with a brand new coaching client, I'm alert to these two questions. And sometimes the answer is so readily apparent that there's absolutely no need to ask them. And sometimes it's helpful, for me anyway, to dig a little bit deeper in order to get some clarity for me and for them. So for me, when we're considering change, whether that's making or managing a change in our outer world or in how we experience our inner world, it comes down to asking yourself two questions. And I think these are the two questions that I asked myself unconsciously, subconsciously, if you prefer. So the two questions are, do you believe change is possible? How would you answer that? Do you believe change is possible? And there's no judgment here to whatever your answer is. If your answer's no, your answer's no. And that's okay. That's where you're at right now. That's fine. And if your answer's yes, then that's okay. That's where you're at right now. That's fine. But if your answer's yes, the next question is, and are you willing to do the work? And this isn't about work like a job is work. This is about the inspirational, transformational, revelatory work with a capital W. And for me, answering these questions with yes sets that intention that you are choosing yourself, not in a selfish, self-centered, narcissistic way, but in a compassionate, curious, considered way, a way that sees caring deeply for yourself is part of caring deeply for the world and the people around you. Gosh, I mean, just saying that, I feel so much emotion in there. I can feel my voice is wobbling. I can feel tears pricking at my eyes. There is nothing more important. Because when we learn how to care for ourselves, then we're more able to care for others. And that's really what I learned. So I shared a short piece of writing recently on Instagram that I've since reflected reads almost like a My Darling Girl poem. And if you don't know the My Darling Girl poems, I'll share a link in the notes. And I've been sharing some readings of the My Darling Girl poems over on Instagram, and it's been utter joy sharing them, reading them live on there. But this particular piece of writing, although it didn't begin My Darling Girl, I realised afterwards it read like one. And aspects of this piece of writing, to me, when I reread it, they feel like I could have written it to myself when I was going through my early days of inner upheaval, inner melting and transformation. And I was drawn to write this piece on a complete whim, which is so often the case that I've learned to simply run with it rather than overthink and, question it. So I'd like to share it with you. And perhaps this piece is something that's useful for you. Or perhaps it's useful for someone you love. And in which case, please share this episode if you know someone who is wanting to embark on change, but they're unsure or they're struggling with the change that they are noticing is calling for them or pulling or pushing at them, then do share this episode. So this piece of writing, it begins, I've been noisier than usual recently. Sharing poems, thoughts, things about myself. It's surprising me, but I'm going with it. Something is drawing me to speak. And maybe it's you I'm speaking to. Maybe you're feeling like you want to be heard. Maybe something within you is asking to be seen. Maybe you sense an awakening of a long dormant part. Maybe you'd like to talk. Maybe it's time. Maybe you've been wondering about this for a while. Maybe it's a new surgence within. Maybe you've been doing the work for a while and want to see what to do with what you've found. Maybe this change you feel rising feels overwhelming at times. Maybe you're seeking a guide. Maybe having someone walking beside you a while would feel like comfort and courage combined. If a yes arises to one or more, then maybe you are why I'm here right now, asking all these maybes. Maybe this is the moment to reach in. So, I say it reads to me like a My Darling Girl because each one of the My Darling Girl poems were things that it felt to me like my inner self was writing for me. Guidance, wisdom, courage, compassion, clarity. All of these things came through in the My Darling Girl poems. And I feel that this piece that I've just shared with you was something that I needed to hear, actually, right at the very beginning of my journey, or maybe partway through too, or maybe at multiple points, to be more honest, because change isn't linear. It doesn't begin and end in a straight line. It moves in this meandering, overlapping, tangling, weaving curve. And often we find we go back to the beginning and ask ourselves, oh my goodness me, am I here again? And in those times, maybe we need to hear some of the questions that I asked in this piece of writing. I'm going to share this piece actually in the notes if you want to read it for yourself. And I kind of find myself wanting to say, I hope that's been okay. I hope it's been okay that I've taken this time to speak about my experience, and to speak in this way with you. I'm trusting that it is. And next week we'll be back to usual service. Will be resumed. And as ever, thank you so much for listening. I find this place of connecting with everybody who listens to be so powerful and such an honour to be here, knowing that you are here too. And so I'm going to say goodbye for now, and I send you a hug and a wave.